Thank you, Mr. Adams. Mr. Johnson.
Hi, how you guys doing? Senators? One of the things I wanted to bring up, first let me tell you who I am. Name's James Johnson, co-founder of a group called E Pluribus Unum, and one of the leaders and spokesperson for the Ohio Unorganized Militia. I've spoken to many groups around Ohio and in other states, and I've also helped start some groups. Now, what I wanted to touch on was what Mr. Thompson said. I think he focused on a key point, which was why these groups are forming. Why is it growing like it is? And that's some of the topics that need to be addressed, and I think maybe you can talk to some people on the inside like you have here to answer those questions. To put it to you bluntly, some of the legislation that's coming out of Washington, some of the executive actions that are taking place, ladies and gentlemen, these things started a revolution 200 years ago and got this country started. And the people are seeing this. The national news media and the actions of this government is some of the best recruitment we could have. We don't have to say much. All you have to do is talk to the average person out there to tell you, how do you feel about your government? And the people you look at here, we're the calm ones. We're the ones that calm people down. Now, I'm speaking here as a representative for my state and other groups that I know of. The animosity that I see out there between the citizens, all of them, and the government is frightening. What they did was, after listening to all these abuses and government atrocities that you're going to hear here today, and they saw that they were going to no avail, they decided to see what they could do to become part of the solution. They looked into the law, and under Title 10 U.S.C. 311 saw a phenomenon known as the unorganized militia that consists of all people, even the people taking these pictures right here, everyone. And they began to form themselves in units for their own self-defense and their self-preservation. Now, the way we stand now, and it's good that we're getting these views aired out, because 200 years ago, the British didn't get the hint until they saw dead redcoats out there. But this time, maybe we can get this out in the open and have things resolved. Because I feel, and it's concerning to me, and I'm being sincerely honest, that with the increasing polarization between the tax-paying public out there and what goes on, not only in here, but certain state governments, that the only thing standing between some of the current legislation being contemplated and armed conflict is time. It's one of the reasons I got in this movement, to help prevent that. Now, you can see from the last 2 years of sales from the firearms producers in this country, this nation is probably one of the most heavily armed forces on earth. And I have heard more and more people say, if one of these black-suited, armor-wearing, state-sponsored terrorists come kicking down my door, I'm going to blow somebody away. They don't call themselves militia. They don't even call themselves patriots. They call themselves American citizens who are getting tired of confiscatory tax rates, increasingly heavy regulations, which is, they believe, are leading them down a path to involuntary servitude. And one of the slogans that's been going around, especially in Ohio, is what I've been telling people, for those who think that this is just primarily an angry white male movement, is that if our ancestors would have been armed, they would not have been slaves. That's why people are beginning armed. Not so much with firepower. That's not the thing that makes it dangerous. What makes it dangerous is that they're being armed with knowledge. What you're going to see is a growing number of citizens, and you're seeing that now, that's why we're here, move away from the authority that is here in the Beltway and began to create their own constitutional authority. You're going to begin to see this in the resurgence of the common law courts. You're going to begin to see this, and I'm going to summarize here, in the formation of the militias. That's what came first to defend ourselves. But you're also going to see this on the legislative end. You're going to see your own candidates in our own elections, and hopefully that we can become a system which will attract others into a more constitutional-based system. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
Today, the following statement will attempt to answer the question of the legitimacy and the need of the citizen militia. Not only does the Constitution specifically allow the formation of a federal army, it also recognizes the inherent right of the people to form militia. Further, it recognizes that the citizen and his personal armament are the foundation of the militia. The arming of the militia is not left to the state, but to the citizen. However, should the state choose to arm its citizen militia, it is free to do so, bearing in mind that the Constitution is not a document limiting the citizen, but rather limiting the power of government. But should the state fail to arm its citizen militia, the right of the people to keep and bear arms becomes the source of the guarantee that the state will not be found defenseless in the presence of a threat to its security. It makes no sense whatsoever to look to the Constitution of the United States or that of any state for permission to form a citizen militia, since logically the power to permit is also the power to deny. If brought to its logical conclusion in this case, government may deny the citizen the right to form a militia. If this were to happen, the state would assert itself as the principal of the contract, making the people the agents. Liberty then would depend on the state's grant of liberty. Such a concept is foreign to American thought. While the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution recognizes the existence of the state militia and recognizes their necessity for securing a free state, and while it also recognizes that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, the Second Amendment is not the source of the right to form a militia nor to keep and bear arms. Those rights existed in the states prior to the formation of the Federal Union. In fact, the right to form militia and to keep and bear arms exists from antiquity. The enumeration of those rights in the Constitution only underscores their natural occurrence and importance. According to the 10th Amendment, ultimate power over the militia is not delegated to the federal government by the Constitution. Consequently, the power of the militia remains in the hands of the people. Again, the fundamental function of the militia in society remains with the people. Therefore, the Second Amendment recognizes that the militia's existence and the security of the state rests ultimately in the people, who volunteer their persons to constitute the militia and their arms to supply its firepower. The primary defense of the state rests with the citizen militia bearing its own arms. Fundamentally, it is not the state that defends the people, but the people who defend the state. The second line of defense of the state consists of a statutory organization known as the National Guard. Whereas the National Guard is solely the creation of statutory law, the militia derives its existence from the inherent inalienable rights which existed before the Constitution and whose importance are such that they merit specific recognition in that document. While the National Guard came into existence as the result of legislative activity, the militia existed before there was a nation or a constitutional form of government. The militia, consisting of people owning and bearing personal weapons, is the very authority out of which the United States Constitution grew. This point must be emphasized. Neither the citizen's militia nor the citizen's private arsenal can be an appropriate subject of federal regulation. It was the armed militia of the American colonies whose own efforts ultimately led to the establishment of the United States of America. While some may say that the right to keep and bear arms is granted to Americans by the Constitution, just the opposite is true. The federal government itself is the child of the armed citizen. We, the people, are the parent of the child we call government. You, senators, are part of the child that we, the people, gave life to. The increasing amount of federal encroachment into our lives indicates the need for parental corrective action. In short, the federal government needs a good spanking to make it behave. One other important point needs to be made. Since the Constitution is the limiting document upon the government cannot become greater than the granting power. The servant cannot become greater than its master. Therefore, should the chief executive or other branch of government or all branches together act to suspend the Constitution under a rule of martial law, all power granted to government would be canceled and deferred back to the granting power, that is the people. And I'll conclude with this statement: martial law shall not be possible in this country as long as the people recognize the Bill of Rights as inalienable. My statement is not complete, however, it has been made part of the record for those who would like to review it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Olson.